Hi everyone, my name is Nelly. Welcome to my Dopamine Series where I make little projects that make life feel more bearable, meaningful, and gives me something to look forward to. So, about a year ago, I bought an ungodly amount of this Mandalorian Grogu Star Wars fabric because I just loved how it looked. I loved how vibrant the colors were. And I also loved the show because I think during the pandemic, I used to watch The Mandalorian. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to buy a lot of this fabric and I'll figure something out. I'll think of something to make. And I never did. And looking back, I don't know what the heck I was thinking buying so much of this fabric. I I cringe when I remember how much I spent on this. And of course, it's been sitting in my closet collecting dust. But the new Mandalorian and Grogu movie reminded me of it, and I thought, you know what, let me finally put this fabric to good use. And so for today's dopamine project, I made this large Mandalorian and Grogu tote bag. It has three pockets big enough for things like pads, meds, books, and other everyday items. Even has a little cuff to keep my water bottle upright so it's not rolling around in my bag. Now, let me show you how I made it. For the main fabric, I measured out about 25.5 inches for the width, and then for the height, I measured 20 inches. Same thing with the lining fabric, it's also 25 by 20 inches. For the main body fabric, I attached some fusible fleece to make it, I guess, more firm and have some sort of structure. The dimension for the back strap is 26 inches by 6 inches. This is a small pocket that I'm going to be sewing, and it's 17.5 inches by 7.5 inches. This is 12 by 12 inches, and I'm going to use it to sew a holder for water bottle. So this is going to make a large pocket, and how I achieved this was I just placed some of the yellow fabric over the lining fabric that I already cut out, and I followed the shape that it already had and cut out the corners. And then I just cut the excess fabric so that it has a height of 10 inches, and then this measures out to be 25.5. So I drew out some lines to make sections that would form the pockets, and then I also drew a line here because we're going to be sewing down here to make the pockets. So the first step is to fold the top edge of the large pocket twice and then do a top stitch, and then sew straight down on the lines that we drew out in order to create the pocket sections. And yes, I know I'm using pink thread because I love the contrast of hot pink and butter yellow. Now for the second step, we're going to fold the fabric for the small pocket in half and then sew down on the two raw edges. For the third raw edge, we're going to leave a small opening in the middle in order to allow us to turn the pocket to the right side. After sewing all three edges, clip the corners and then turn the pockets inside out to the right side. Step 3. Place the small pocket wherever you like on your second lining fabric, but just make sure that the part with the opening that we left is the part that's going to be sewn down to the lining fabric, and the part that has no opening is going to be left open as the flappy side of the pocket, so that when you have your pocket you don't have this awkward hole in your pocket. Step 4, we're going to take the 12 by 12 inch fabric and fold that in half, and then we're going to sew along the edge in order to create a tube. Once that's done, use an iron or your fingers to press the seam open, and then flip the fabric inside out and do a top stitch on the two long edges of the fabric. And now we have a cuff. Now we're going to take that cuff and pin it to the edge of the lining fabric and attach them together. Step 5. With the right sides facing each other, clip both of the lining fabrics together and sew the left and the right sides completely. For the bottom part, don't sew all the way through. Just stitch a little bit of the left edge and a little bit of the right edge and leave a fairly large opening in the middle because we're going to use that opening to turn the bag inside out later at the end. Now we're going to create the boxed corners. To do that, we're going to match the seam on one of the long edges to the seam on the bottom edge closest to it. We'll clip the seam and then clip the two edges, and we're just going to sew a straight line, and then we're going to repeat the same thing on the opposite corner. For step 6, we're going to take the fabric for the strap and fold it in half. You can press it with an iron if you like, or you can use your fingers. When you open it up, there should be a visible middle line. So now you're going to fold one edge of the strap to meet the middle line, and then fold the other edge of the strap to meet the middle line. And when we have that little meeting point, we're going to then fold them on top of each other and clip that in place. And a quick side note, the white stuff that I have in the middle is called a medium weight sew-on interfacing, and it helps to give the fabric structure and sturdiness. It's completely optional, but I think it's a good idea. Now, using the 1/8 marking on your sewing machine, we're going to do a top stitch very close to the edge of the straps on both sides. And I don't know if you noticed, but I switched out the pink thread to an orange one because I wanted something that matched the outer fabric. Step 7. After making the straps, it's time to attach them to the main body fabric. And to do that, we're going to measure 7 inches from both edges of the fabric and make a mark. Then we're going to take the strap and clip it towards the inside portion of the marking that we made, not on the outer edge, if that makes sense. We're going to repeat the same thing for the second strap. Then we're going to sew it down to the main body fabric using the 1/8 seam allowance on the sewing machine. For step 8, we're going to sew the main body fabric together, just like how we did for the lining fabric, but this time we're not going to leave any opening at the bottom of the fabric because we don't need any opening to turn the bag since we already have an opening on the lining fabric. And also, after you sew all the 3 edges, don't forget to do the boxed corners just like how we did the boxed corners on the lining fabric. Step 9. With right sides facing each other, we're going to match the seams on the lining with the seams on the main body fabric. We're going to clip that all around the mouth of the bag, and then using the 3/8 seam allowance on the sewing machine, we're going to sew the main fabric and the lining fabric together, ensuring that the straps are inside the bag and not outside. Step 10. In this step, we're going to attach the bottom of the lining to the bottom of the main fabric. To do that, we're going to match the seams on the bottom of both fabrics and clip them together. Now we're going to repeat this on the other corner of the bag and sew a straight line across in order to attach them. The purpose of this is to prevent the lining from being pulled out when you're trying to grab an item from the bag. After it's sewn, this is what it should look like. For the 11th step, we're going to pull the bag out from the opening that we left at the bottom of the lining fabric. Step 12. After it's pulled out, this is what it's looking like. We're going to do a top stitch on the edge of the bag using the 1/8 marking on the sewing machine. We're going to stitch very close to the edge of the bag. For the 13th and final step, we're going to close the opening on the lining fabric. You can either do a top stitch or you can do a ladder stitch with a needle and thread like how I'm doing here. Either way is perfectly fine. And now the bag is all done. I'm so happy that I have a large tote bag now that has lots of pockets and also a bottle holder. I love having bags with lots of space and pockets because I'm always hauling around a bunch of things. I love how fun and vibrant the bag is, and I will definitely be carrying it around with me all summer. Let me know in the comments if you've watched the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. I currently haven't, but I definitely will be watching it in the coming weeks. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a thing or two. I also hope you give this tote bag a try. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next project. Bye for now.